right, hey, Vikings fans, welcome into another episode of the Skol Hop. I'm Evan.
And I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer, talking about the Vikings.
Yep, and you may notice if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify that we are graced yet again with friend of the show, Forrest. Thanks for coming on.
What's up, fellas?
Yeah, so Forrest has been pretty regular anytime the Vikings have played the Bears. In fact, the reason that we're kind of doing this virtually is because our normal recording night is Monday, and the Vikings and the Bears played on Monday Night Football. So we kind of got to watch the second half of the game together and talk about a whole bunch of other stuff while we were watching it.
Yep, and some of the other stuff that we talked about was we kind of did some recapping on all things NFC North as of right now. So how do things land? The Lions lost, the Packers won and put the Vikings in. It was pretty interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and regardless of the outcome of the game, we had 3 different Iowa brewed beers that we all tried in our different locations. So amazing regardless.
Yeah, so no matter what you're into drinking, and if you want to find out what beers specifically we all tried, make sure you check out this episode, grab your favorite beverage, and join us. Skol.
Skol.
Yeah.
We're going to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Big Top Ventures. They can get you the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts in Mexico or Jamaica. So you can send them an email. We'll drop that email down here at the bottom of the screen. It's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Send them an email. Let them know what you're looking for, and you can step right up to your next big adventure with Big Top Ventures.
Yeah. And I am fresh off a trip to Jamaica thanks to Big Top Ventures. And tell you what, man, today was the first work day back since being in Jamaica, and I wasn't in it. I wasn't there for it. My brain is still in Jamaica. So if you want your brain to live in Jamaica or Mexico, go ahead and reach out to Big Top Ventures. They're awesome.
Appreciate you bringing in a little bit of the warmer weather back.
Yeah, a little bit.
Not great, but home. Better than what we had. So
yeah, it was like ice and freezing rain while we were traveling home, but by the time we landed, it was all okay. But yeah, so you may notice a couple of things here, Skol Hoppers. You might notice that extra voice. It's a Vikings-Bears game actually going on right now, which is something I'll talk about here in a minute. But Vikings-Bears game, we got friend of the show Forrest here graciously. It's turned into every Vikings-Bears game you've come on. I don't think we've missed one yet. So
no, not yet.
Thank you for coming on, Forrest. We appreciate you being here, even though the other thing that I'm going to say, we are recording during the Vikings-Bears game. So you in the future listening, you know how this game ended up right now. For us right now, the third quarter just started. The Vikings are driving down, and it's 13-0, and Sam Darnold just threw an incomplete pass to make it 3rd and 15. So that's how real it is right now. But we are all recording from our own houses right now, so it might sound a little bit different than normal. And if you're watching the video on YouTube or Spotify, you can see that we're the only one of us is in the Skol Man Center, the normal recording studio. That's Evan. So Forrest and I were both at home. Evan's at home too, but he always is. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
I couldn't take facing you two in person tonight after what was a bad performance. So.
Well, that's funny, but you're not the reason that we're recording from home. It's actually, kind of life schedules happen, and, sometimes you got to do things a little bit different. So this is fun, though. We get to talk about the game as it's happening, kind of live react, but we'll talk about other stuff, too. I guess before we get to that, a couple things. Because we're recording live or during the game, we don't really know how Purple Punishments is going to shake out. So I think we're still figuring out that. We might do some double spinning next episode. I'm not too sure, but Evan and I, we will get that figured out. And one other thing. We got to talk about beer. We've got 3 different beers on the episode. Probably. I guess I don't know what everybody else is drinking. But, yeah, we're going to talk about what we're drinking tonight.
Do we all have Iowa beer?
I have an Iowa beer, of course.
I do.
So do I.
Yeah,
Sweet.
that's the mantra of the episode. So we did tell Forrest, he's an Illinois resident. We told him that he didn't necessarily have to hold to the Skol Hops Iowa only beer because he's technically in Illinois right now. But yeah, it sounds like Forrest is drinking an Iowa beer. You may notice my voice cut off every once in a while because I have a Vikings game live in front of me. So I'm going to get just slightly distracted throughout this episode. But who wants to go first?
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, go
All
for
right.
it.
I'm really excited about this one. I've had a version of this before, but from SingleSpeed. I haven't had this one yet. I'm really excited to be drinking the Mint Tip the Cow. I don't think I've ever had it before. Forrest, you may be able to tell me if I'm wrong, and we've had it before together.
I don't think we've had it together, no.
But I've never had it before. I'm really excited about this.
It's a good one.
Nice. All right, Forrest,
who's
what do you
next?
got?
I am drinking Confluence, the Nessie with coffee, hazelnut coffee. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah, it's they make it once a year. It's one of me and my wife's favorites. So
You guys are both kind of riding the coffee vibes tonight a little bit. There you go. Well, I have some really special beer that I'm excited, not to, trump either of you guys and what you guys brought. But I was able to visit a brewery that Austin and I are going to go to for a live podcast event in January, River Ridge Brewing up in Bellevue, Iowa. So I stopped through there on my way to just a little weekend trip last weekend, and they graciously hooked me up with a few different beers. And while we were there, I got to try like 5 of their beers. They gave me little samples of stuff, and I had a few full glasses of a few things too. So I'm really excited to show you guys these tonight. This is their Lucky Catch Irish Red.
Okay.
So of course, anything in that category is my favorite. And I tried it. It was really good. The one that I'm really excited for you to try, Austin, I don't know what your take on porters is, Forrest, but you might like this too. This is their Friends Vanilla Porter.
Ooh,
and
okay.
My camera's struggling to focus on it right now, but they gave me a sample of this. I didn't even know that it was this beer. The bartender just poured me something, put it in front of me, and I tried it, and I was like, whoa, that is amazing. And it reminded me of when Austin and I were in college and we tried the Snowdrift Vanilla Porter for the first time from Line & Kugel's, and we both fell in love with it, especially kind of around this time of year, the winter months. So I think this is what I'm going to start with because It's super good, and I'm excited.
Right. Well, that sounds exciting. Yeah, Skol Hoppers, keep an eyes and ears out for that On Tap event that the Mainstream podcast is putting on. We met the Mainstream at the Iowa Podcast Awards, like Kevin said. And really ever since I've been listening to them, their podcast. I hadn't heard of them before that, just like I'm sure they hadn't heard of us before that. But I've been listening to them. They do a really good job. They just kind of talk about guy stuff. And it's not just like, just the frat boy guy stuff. It's like, I don't know, the man experience. They do a fun job. They're really fun to listen to. Skol Hoppers, definitely check them out. And if you can, head on out to that live event in Bellevue. Is that correct? On January 18th. I'm really excited for that. Forrest, you're more than welcome to join us for that. That'd be great. It should be a good time.
Cool. Well, let's crack these open and enjoy some beer.
All right. Well, I already cracked mine, but I'm ready to skol it up to you guys.
I'm going to pour mine quick. Hang on.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You mean glass, Austin?
No glass. I thought about it, but yeah, sometimes you just got to can it up.
You got to let the beer breathe.
It's been breathing. I opened it for a minute.
I am sitting here in our studio where we have glasses available always.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go.
All right, Skol.
Skol.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. This is the perfect coffee mint. Yeah, I love it. If you've had Tip the Cow, you know it well. It's a beautiful coffee beer. And I love a mint flavor too. So usually my coffee flavor just has to be hot and black, but this is delicious. I love it so much. So what do you guys think of your beers?
I mean, I've had mine before. It's always a good one. If you like hazelnut coffee, definitely gets like a Scottish red ale. So it's more than just a stout or just a blonde. So adds a little maltiness to it. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, this is really good. I really only had just a sip of the foam on the first pour there. But I'm sure as that comes down a little bit, I'll get more into the body of the beer. But you can already just taste the vanilla, and that's what I liked about it. The vanilla really kind of mellows things out and makes it a really delightful beer. So I'm excited.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll be sipping on those. We might give more opinions here later in the episode, but yeah, sounds like 3 solid beers so far. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that's pretty cool is the NFC North kind of went the way of the Vikings this weekend. Right now, the Vikings and Bears are playing, which it's still 13-0 right now with 13 minutes left in the third quarter, and it looks like the Bears. They've just had a hold for a sack. I don't know. I'm trying not to pay too much attention so that I can be an active podcaster. But the Lions, they lost. They lost for just the second time this season to the Bills in a game that maybe it felt like it was closer than it was the whole time. I enjoyed watching that game. It was fun, especially since the Bills basically had the lead the whole time. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And the Packers, yeah, they won, which we never root for, but mathematically, because they won and beat the Seahawks, it technically locked up that final domino for the Vikings.
You can say it, Austin. You were a smidge rooting for the Packers just for Vikings purposes.
Well, kind of, because yes, the Vikings did lock up a playoff spot. They've clinched. We don't know what seed yet. It seems like it's either going to be the 1 seed or the 5 seed, and those are really the only choices right now. But yeah, the Packers winning did lock that up for the Vikings. But, I mean, I wasn't rooting for that because I knew the Vikings, they hold their own destiny. So, I mean, if the Packers didn't do it, then the Vikings winning their next game probably would have done it. So, yeah, I still always root against the Packers. And that one wasn't too hard because it wasn't like the Vikings needed the Packers to win. It was their only hope. It just happened to be.
You're still talking. Potentially you don't know how the rest of the season is going to go, seeding and everything. Putting distance between you and other teams. So
yeah, I agree. Although I'd argue that putting distance between the Vikings and the Packers would be good right now. And they're technically as of right now, just a game back.
Well, I thought you were 2, weren't you? I thought you were 2 games. Only 1.
Well, right now the Packers have 10 wins. The Vikings have 11 as things sit this moment. So for the listeners in the future, they know exactly how it sits. But technically 1 game ahead. And then the Vikings beat the Packers earlier this year. So a game and a half as things sit this very second.
But the Vikings had 11 wins.
They do right now.
Oh, I thought you should have said 10. So
I may have misspoke. I don't know.
I gotta keep you honest, man. I gotta keep you honest on your own team here.
We're also all watching a football game right now. So
I think I texted this to Austin yesterday. I said I would rather see the Vikings clinch on their own rather than rely on the Packers to essentially clinch for the Vikings. Mm-hmm. And I think this Vikings team wants to do that. They want to take what's out there for them and not just, rely on what other teams in the league can do. So, yeah, the Packers won, and yes, that clinched a playoff spot for the Vikings, but I don't think that changed anything about the game plan for tonight's game against the Bears. I think Kevin O'Connell and the rest of the team are still trying to win this game and win the rest of their games, because if they win the rest of their games, they're likely the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as the way things sit right now, if the Vikings win out, they will be the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I think even if the Eagles win out, the Vikings are still the number 1 seed because I think they hold the tiebreaker over the Eagles. I could be wrong, but I think that's the way I see it right now.
And in theory, even though the Lions and the Vikings have the same number of wins right now, or would have the same number of wins if the Vikings beat the Bears tonight. In theory, if the Vikings win out, that means they have beaten the Lions in Week 18 for the division and for the number 1 seed. So as of right now, that Week 18 game, that Vikings-Lions Week 18 game, that's huge. That's setting up to be the biggest game of the season, one for all the marbles. And again, as things sit right now already, that game doesn't matter for either the Lions or Vikings playoff chances because they both already clinched, which is kind of crazy to say, mid-December. I wonder when the last time, maybe 2009, the last time the Vikings clinched a playoff spot by this time of the year. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. And makes, the rest of the games even more interesting because now it's like, what's the seeding going to be like? Where, I mean, the excitement and the drama isn't over. It's not just, rest the starters and circle up the wagons until the playoff starts. It's, you got to keep winning and you got to, keep grinding away at things, and you got to prepare for any situation, playing wild card weekend or resting up and playing in the divisional round. So there's a whole lot of excitement left in the Viking season.
Absolutely. Forrest, as a Bears fan, and not, in the trenches of rooting and super biased as a Vikings fan, who do you think, and be honest, at this moment, who would you guess gets that number 1 seed in the NFC? Because, it's really, there's a handful of teams that could make their way up into that.
It's a tough one. I think it's a 3-way race. And I think it's the easy answer is cop out, but you got the Lions, the Vikings, and the Eagles, I think you see it game after game, week after week. They're all playing at high levels. I know, the Lions lost yesterday, but they lost to a good Bills team.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I think the Bills were in control basically for the game, but the Lions came close, and it's gonna be fun, like you said. If your prediction comes true, where the NFC North comes down to Week 18, it's gonna be fun to see how that plays out. I could see one of the 2 teams, the Vikings or Lions, playing for that number 1 seed. I think the Eagles are good, but I could see them losing again before. So, yep.
Yeah, the Eagles are definitely a dominant team right now. Although I think any team has their weaknesses. I think if someone figures out how to hold Saquon Barkley to just normal human stats and not Superman stats, then they might have a chance at beating the Eagles. But you could say that about every team. If somebody stops Justin Jefferson from catching a ball, they might beat the Vikings. There's always that something for every team. But
yeah, that's why they're all contenders. They have good playmakers. They have those players that just can go off in 1 second and really make a difference for your team. So
one of those playmakers for the Lions injured and probably won't be back this season, David Montgomery, going down
I
with
think
MCL or something like that.
Yeah, you got him, and then their lineman O'Neal.
Yeah.
Man.
Maybe not O'Neal, but
Aleem McNeil, I think.
McNeil, thank you. I know. Yep, McNeil. Just crazy.
And the Lions are already banged up to start.
It'll be interesting to see what the Lions do because, as good as Gibbs is as a running back, he is not a thunder, pound it type running back. And it'll be interesting to see what the Lions do for the remainder of the season.
They're going to rely on Jahmyr Gibbs a whole lot more, I'm sure.
Well, they have to, and he's a fantastic, dynamic player. But sometimes you just need a player to run it down the throat, and you need a little more weight, power, bruiser back to do that. So
I agree. I might be in the minority, but I think the loss of Montgomery for the Lions, while it's no small thing because Montgomery is very big and very good. He's been a very big part of that team. I think they're going to be able to figure that out. The rest of the offense is pretty great. Their offensive coordinator is showing to be an elite offensive mind, and I don't think I'm breaking any news or saying anything you guys can't agree with in saying that losing one, although very good player, the rest of the Lions are good enough to overcome that. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine overall, but they definitely have to change some of their schemes and play calling. They had so many play calls that were involved with David Montgomery. So, yep.
Absolutely. Well, and the Lions, they've been riddled with injury, at big points throughout the season. Not the least of all, Aiden Hutchinson has been out a lot of the season, and it doesn't seem to have been, a season ender for the team overall. So they're a good team. I don't think there's any question about that. And, dealing with the injuries they have been, maybe it'll be one of those where, the final straw that breaks the camel's back ultimately hits them. But as of right now, I'm not saying that they're done. They haven't lost the one good player they had, so it'll still be a good season. I kind of think they will win out until that Week 18 game. I kind of think that about the Vikings as well. So it'll be fun to follow these next few weeks.
Absolutely.
So focusing in on the game that's currently happening right now. I mean, even though by the time this is published and people are listening to it, the game will be old news and we'll have a clear winner and a clear loser. Hopefully not a tie, because that would be disappointing for everybody. But there are still, I think, some concerns for this Vikings team. I mean, the Vikings are currently winning 13-0. Sam Darnold is struggling tonight. He's not finding the open guy. He's overthrowing Justin Jefferson on some big plays. Not just him, Jordan Addison, he's overthrown a few times, TJ Hawkinson as well. He's made some good throws tonight too, but maybe it's those 5 touchdowns from last week against the Falcons that kind of have him, in a quarterback hangover, so to speak.
And we're sitting here with 10 and a half minutes left in the third quarter. Sam Darnold's already thrown 30 passes.
Yeah, and that's maybe his highest attempt number is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's definitely one of them, if not the highest. So he's 17 of 30 right now for 157 yards, a touchdown, and that fourth down, pretty not great interception, but one that was essentially a punt too. But yeah, I mean, the Vikings, they kind of started off with a bang. It seemed like, and here's another free play for the Bears. It seemed like the Vikings were going to come out and just dominate this whole game. It was 10-0 pretty quick. And then, ever since Justin Jefferson's just weird drop that you'll never see more than once or twice in his career. If he wouldn't have had that huge drop, he probably would have caught it and scored a touchdown, or maybe even dropped, a yard away from the end zone. Ever since that drop, the Vikings offense kind of like froze. It's kind of like they flinched and they stalled really ever since then. And now the Bears here, as I'm saying this, they got a free play, but it didn't matter because Caleb Williams threw it for what looked like 20, 30 yards to Roma Dunze. Now the Bears are at the inside the 30-yard line of the Vikings. So this is turning into
they've been there a few times already tonight and with no success. So.
That's true. I will say the Vikings defense has overall looked pretty awesome this game. They have made it tough for Caleb Williams to look comfortable outside of 1 or 2 or 3 plays here and there. The Vikings defense is what's keeping them in the game right now, and there's still plenty of time. Against the Falcons last week, the Vikings didn't really explode until late in the third quarter. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe the offense can get the break or the mental clarity that they need on the sideline really quick here.
Something that I was pounding the table when I was watching the first half after Jefferson dropped that like just it was going to be a touchdown. It looks
Mhm.
like. I mean, he was inside the 5-yard line. He would have made a move on the defender that was there, and he would have scored easily. I was pounding the table in that moment. Go back to him, drop the same exact play and let it like restore his confidence almost immediately. And Kevin O'Connell has done that from time to time. I remember earlier this season, they tried that pitch play to Aaron Jones on like one of the first plays of the game. It was a fumble, and he went right back to it. I think on the next offensive possession, it was successful, and the Vikings won the game.
Mhm.
And same thing with Aaron Jones fumbling a few weeks ago. He gave Aaron Jones the opportunity to go out and win the game on the last play, sealed the deal. So I was pounding the table for that. Like, go back to Justin Jefferson, get him another touch on a similar opportunity, and get that kind of off of everybody's mind, because I'm sure everybody in that stadium was a little aghast at the fact that Justin Jefferson dropped that.
I think, Evan, I couldn't agree more with you on, like, I don't understand why coaches, like, what was working early on in a game, and then they, like, forget about the rest of the game. And I'll be, not to bring it back to the college level and not back to Michigan, but Michigan-Ohio State game, Ohio State early on was just throwing easy sideline passes. They were getting first down after first down. And then after like the first quarter, they stopped doing that. And it's just like, that's how they lost the game. And now I'm not saying the Vikings are going to lose this game.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, why do coaches forget what was working, early on in the game? Go back to it, to your point.
I watched an interesting documentary not too long ago about it was about the sign stealing allegations at Michigan.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting because, I think, was this the first season that college quarterbacks had a radio in their headset?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
So up until this year, games could change as soon as the opposing team figured out the signs from the other team. And it wasn't just Michigan, it was everybody. It was just Michigan kind of got caught doing it. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Michigan.
No, I this is a whole different conversation. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, Evan. There's just a lot to unpack, but that's for a different episode.
Yeah, for sure. But I just think there is a difference between at least the college game prior to this season and the pro game. Has been for a long time.
Agree.
So, the fact that the coach can talk directly to the quarterback on offense and defense, they can talk to somebody on the defense, usually a linebacker. It's beneficial because then there are no signs on the sideline. It's, that one guy who's on the field with everybody directing traffic and making sure he makes the right calls and relays the message. And it's up to the other guys to, know their coverages and know where they need to be and know their spots, all that good stuff. So, but yeah, I think, games develop and change over time. I think the pro game develops differently than the college game does. I guess is the long-winded point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Well, in the last couple of minutes here, the Bears' DeAndre Swift has scored a touchdown on a short run at the goal line, but that was negated by a weird penalty where an offensive lineman came in, lined up at fullback, but he was called, I think it was illegal procedure or whatever.
I think it was an illegal procedure.
Yeah, he didn't declare as a receiver, so that negated that touchdown run. And then the Bears had a couple of plays and they got close. They were back within, the 2 or 3 yard line of the scoring a touchdown here, and then a holding penalty on the Bears again. So now I think it's third down here.
Yeah, third and goal, but long. They're on like the 15-yard line.
Yeah, I think they're just inside the 15-yard line. So after scoring a touchdown and 2 big mistakes, and I think the only mistake for that Bear that got called on the touchdown run was that he didn't, report as eligible.
Yeah.
I think other than that, he didn't do anything wrong, which is a heartbreaker. And I mean, it's technically against the rules, but man, I'd be really upset And now it looks like the Vikings just held the Bears here to a 4th and goal. Caleb Williams can't. Every time he looks up, he's got face or hands in his face.
And I'm giving some credit to the Vikings, but man, that Bears O line is just horrendous. It's horrendous. It's been horrendous all year.
And how much can you expect, truthfully? And I'm not trying to talk crap or anything, but as far as penalties go and as far as schemes go, how much can you expect from a team whose head coach right now was less than their offensive coordinator just a month or so ago? I know. The Bears did kick a field goal to make it 13-3. But yeah, I mean
craziness. I mean, a lot of things could have played out, but if the Bears would have elected to kick the field goal on those other two, it could have been 13-9. Just throwing out the possibility.
Absolutely. This is a close game.
Yeah.
Of course, on that 3rd down play that turned it into 4th down, the TV just played a slow-mo replay of a defender swiping down and grabbing Caleb Williams' face mask. So something the Vikings have had happen to Sam Darnold a couple times this season. Now we just see it not get called against the Vikings, who were who did that illegally as well. So I guess as long as the refs are bad for everybody, how much can you really complain? But yeah,
I'll complain. It's against my team. I'll complain.
I saw something. And I guess I didn't really realize this happened. They moved whatever referee it is that stands in the backfield. They moved them to a different spot. And that was the justification for why so many of these penalties, not the justification from the league or from the officials or anything, but just somebody connected the dots, probably out on the Twitterverse somewhere. That they moved that official, and so they're not getting the same perspective on those types of plays as they normally got before this season. And that makes sense to me. Like if you move a guy into a different position and their job is to watch something, but they can't see because you moved them, well, then they're not going to see the things that they need to see. So perhaps that's a change that NFL officiating needs to make.
Yeah, I think it's something they have done or changed. You're feeling a tangible difference in NFL officiating overall this season. I think everyone who has been paying attention to the NFL, and I'm not saying, the Vikings got robbed for a couple of wins because of the refs, but I think officiating overall in the NFL is just not great this year. I think every team has been blatantly robbed on a play or two or a game or two. I think you're seeing just terrible officiating across the board. And maybe it is one of those things where they strategically moved a ref from this spot to this spot and it's causing confusion, or they're not seeing the things that they normally see. I know they always talk about every year, the refs are emphasizing this kind of a call this year. So maybe it's just the fact that they're emphasizing something that they haven't really talked about, and it's coming at the cost of being able to clearly see other plays. I don't know, but
yeah, and that's the thing, Austin. I always hear that every season they're going to emphasize on a few calls or plays that they're seeing, penalties that they're seeing, but when you're emphasizing on others, what's being suffered in that, because it's just unfortunate. It like you said, we always say it's a human game, and there's always going to be human error. You just always hope it's not going to be against your team.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Yep, exactly, and that's why I mean, every time we talk about the refs, I say overall I'm usually a big fan of them. I think more often than not, it's crazy how many calls they get right. Just this year, they're not getting them right, and I think maybe they're advocating for more help from New York, and so they're blatantly just
maybe. I mean, I'm all for that, but at the same time, man, it's if that's their defense is, well, we're just depending on New York to let us buzz us on that. It's not the right mentality, I don't think. But
so something I also saw is something the league is considering is allowing an official that's not on the field to throw a flag. What do you guys think about that?
I mean,
Yeah,
if
go ahead.
a call is made correctly, I'm all for it. If they call the game fairly and correctly, whatever they got to do to make their jobs as easy and fair as possible, I'm all for it. I think they've proven that New York can come into a game without it being a 5-10 minute ordeal, which I think nobody would like. If we were all just sitting around every 2 seconds for 5 minutes, then we'd hate it. But New York seems to be doing well. So yeah,
I think that's the big push is how can you provide more support and make sure the call is right without prolonging the game. I mean, no one wants to sit around. And I think that's one thing I'd say NFL does better than the college is college, and it's partially commercials and everything else broadcasting, but college game lasts longer than the NFL game, and it's frustrating when you all you want to do is just watch a football game in 3 hours and it ends up being like 4 hours, and it's frustrating.
Yep, I think it's plain to see right now too. The second half has been a little ugly for both teams, and the refs have been more prevalent here so far in the last couple of minutes than they have in the whole game. But I think both teams, which this game is not over by any stretch of the imagination. 5.5 minutes left. Vikings are up 13-3. This game is not over by any means. Either team could easily win this game, and I think if the Vikings want to win, scoring here on this drive towards the end of the third quarter is going to go a long ways. And we're all distracted here because we're watching.
Well, it's a third and three in your field position. So,
just to tack on to that. I think New York has definitely played a bigger role recently in the last several seasons, and it's been good, I think, to have almost completely disconnected video replay officials that aren't even in the building and are just literally watching TV like we are and go, oh, nope, that's a pass interference, or that's his toe is on the line, or whatever, I think that's good. My understanding was that they would add like a handful of officials in each stadium in like a video room somewhere, like not on the field. They've got TVs all around them of just that game, and they're looking at every single possible camera angle to make the right call.
Yeah, almost like a buffer between the field and New York, like having an in-person New York, that would be
and
nice.
If that were the case, the communication would be even quicker than going outside the stadium. Granted, we live in a day and age where communication is instant, and we're all sitting in the comfort of our own homes and recording this podcast that'll be disseminated in a lot of different places, and it'll be pretty easy for us to do that. But I think it'll speed things up just a little bit. And you'll have, those officials that are, if that's the way it's going to work out, I don't know if it will. But if that's the way it happens, you'll have those officials like in those pregame meetings where they talk about like, okay, these are the things we're on the lookout for. The Vikings are notorious for this type of penalty, or the Bears are notorious for this type of penalty. We're really going to, hunker down on these particular aspects of the game today. This is what we want to be on the lookout for. We've talked with both coaches. They're aware of what we're focusing on today,
So what do you think about that pass interference we just
saw? Man. I don't like it, but whatever. I mean, you're not gonna win. Yep. I thought it was a good. I mean, maybe a little bit early. Yeah, it's hard.
That could have been a no call. The Bears defender kind of pushed TJ Hawkinson.
I think if anything, he pushed a smidge. But going back to your comment, Evan, and this will never happen, obviously, going backwards, but like thinking of what if they just got rid of instant replay, like the old days. I mean, would we be any worse or better? I mean, because we're talking right now that with instant replay, we're going to get the call right. And it sometimes favors your team, favors the other team. Well, the same thing applied without instant replay, where you got some benefit calls. Sometimes you didn't get the benefit of the call. So from my standpoint, what efficiencies did we gain? Do we honestly think we've gotten better from I would hope so with instant replay, but it seems like we still get enough calls wrong on instant replay, or there are calls that cannot be used for instant replay. So it's just like for me, some games I'd rather just not even have any of it and just let bygones be bygones. I mean, really. So
it's an interesting take, but Forrest, I disagree with you. Evan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I will say, I've noticed probably in the last 2 seasons, and I've been watching the NFL very regularly for 15, 20 years of my life, very attentively, I should say, for quite a while now. I've noticed the past few years that the refs in the NFL are getting better at allowing plays to just play out and not blowing the whistle right away. Because as soon as the whistle's blown, the play's dead. The play has to stop. And there are certain plays where, like, it's those questionable ones where, was the quarterback's arm moving forward or not? And was it a fumble or an incomplete pass? They let the play out. The defense scoops it up, runs it back. They do their whole celebration, and then they go back and look at it because they didn't blow the whistle and rule that, nope, his arm wasn't moving forward. It actually moving backwards. That's a fumble. And, they wipe the, scoop and score off the scoreboard, and the defense has to, swallow their pride with their wonderful celebration that they did. And I've actually appreciated that. And it has happened to the Vikings a few times too in the last several years.
I would tend to agree. And once again, Austin, I wasn't saying we should go, but I was bringing up the just playing devil's advocate. But either way, I think my beef with the whole instant replay is not being able to use it for more. And it all goes back to how much do we want to slow up the game. But you could look at basically any play and be like, well, they got the call wrong, so why can't we use instant replay to reverse that? It's why is it so that certain plays can use it and some can't? And I know you have to draw a line somewhere, but I think that's where my frustration lies is you're not getting enough of the calls right. Let's put it that way. So,
I think ultimately we'll look back at this year and probably even really the last, 5 or 10 years. We'll look back at this time as like a weird limbo time where they were getting it figured out between, I think, live on-field referees are necessary. This isn't baseball where you can have, a perfect computer looking at a strike zone and, decide, 100% accuracy. So I think in football, live in-person referees are definitely necessary. But I also think, it sounds like we all agree, that New York higher level common sense on, videos, that aspect is also necessary. And I just think the last 10 years and maybe the next couple of years is going to be looked at as an era in the NFL where they were getting it right. They were knocking all the kinks out. And at some point, we will sit back and think, man, it's been a couple of years since there's been an egregious call that totally changed a game. I think we'll get to a point where we're like between the real, in-person live refs, AI technology, and New York, the people off the field but looking at the video, that mixture is going to turn into a really good, accurate product as far as officiating a football game, and I can't wait for that time.
All right, I'm going to change topics really quickly, just because I saw they did a nice little tribute on the broadcast there to a guy that had played a lot of games in a Vikings uniform, was very successful, and I actually was the recipient of a pretty cool playing card of this same player this week. I was going to show you guys this.
Oh, who is it, Ev? Tell the listeners.
Yeah, sorry, listeners, if you're just listening. It's a Randy Moss card. I got it from my brother-in-law. He's got quite a few sports cards. just sitting around, and he dug this one out this week. I think this is from his second season, but it also has his career stats on it.
That's super cool.
So, yeah, obviously Randy Moss going through some health struggles right now, dealing with liver cancer. But, yeah, I think there are a lot of 84 jerseys out there at US Bank Stadium tonight. And Justin Jefferson gave him a little tribute on his touchdown pass there in the first quarter, which I thought was pretty cool, too, especially for a guy who's kind of following in Randy Moss's footsteps. In a lot of
you
ways,
could say as things sit down right now, Justin Jefferson, it's hard to say he's not already the second or third best wide receiver in Vikings history. You've got Randy Moss, you've got Chris Carter. You can never forget Hall of Fame number retired Chris Carter. He's probably the best Vikings wide receiver. If you really look at just the team, Chris Carter is probably number one. But as far as overall players, Randy Moss, he's the GOAT. Unfortunately, he never got a Super Bowl, and it sounds like in his cancer announcement, it sounds like he's on the up and up. Either he's already in remission or he's on the way. So that's good to hear. You hope he's okay. But yeah, that card's super cool, and what a great time to get that.
Yeah, it was definitely very timely. So, anyways, looks like the Vikings are knocking on the door here, which is exciting. Could go up
this
here.
drive, they've done a good job of keeping Aaron Jones active, and he's made a few plays, and there was a beautiful pass from Darnold to Jefferson to get Jefferson down to like the 1 or 2 yard line, and Aaron Jones just punched it in for a touchdown. For another show, Brian, for a few weeks, was betting on Aaron Jones to score a touchdown multiple weeks in a row, and I think he kind of chipped off that bandwagon, but he'd be super happy right now.
Yeah. Aaron Jones got to do the bank vault there. That was pretty fun. So Brian not Brian.
Sorry, I messed you up.
Just mentioned Brian, but Forrest is with us. Forrest, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Who's leading the way in the Bears head coaching sweepstakes right now? Or who do you think is going to take over in that spot for the Bears next year?
It's a good question. I think it's got to be someone on the offensive side of the ball.
You think so? Because Eberflus, was he an offensive mind or
he's a defense guy?
Usually you see teams, if they have a defensive-minded coach, they flip-flop when they
that's why I said it's going to be an offensive guy just because of drafting Caleb Williams. They want someone that's going to mold him and showcase him to his full capabilities. I don't know. For me personally, I'm going to reach deep down into the bag here, and this is out of left field, that I could see even a guy like Lincoln Riley come from USC.
Oh.
Come. He's had success developing so many quarterbacks that you now see in the NFL. That'd be my dark horse, I'd say. I know he's got a nice job at USC, but they haven't been winning enough. So, and USC has a strong tradition of winning. So I would say he's on the hot seat. So if he sees an opportunity to jump, he might take it. So
yeah. There is one name I want to throw out there.
Yeah, go for it.
He's an up-and-coming coach. He actually just took over a different program, so I don't know how he'd do on that. But there's a guy in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, who might want to take the leap from college ball to the NFL.
I have to address this. Have you seen all the memes on this thing with him going?
I've seen a few, but I want to hear what you're talking about.
Just the whole, him coaching and his girlfriend, attending classes, and oh man, it's endless.
So of course I was talking about Bill Belichick, which I'm confused as to why he wanted to go to the college ranks, but I did hear somebody somewhere, Twitter or radio or whatever, kind of question like, why would he go there? And somebody answered it like, well, he's wanted a job. He tried to get the Falcons job probably last year, and he wants to work. And he probably just got a sense that the NFL openings, they weren't going to be interested. which includes the Bears right now. So if you believe that, then you got to think for some reason the Bears probably gave him a sense of like, probably not, or maybe we'd interview you. I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't. Like, he's one of the greatest decorated coaches of
I
all
mean,
time.
I would say, why wouldn't you interview him? I just can't see him wanting to come to Chicago. I mean,
Chicago could be a really good job. I mean, it's a storied franchise, historical, kind of like the Lions were a few years ago. They're hungry. They're a hungry team.
they're hungry.
Obviously, the GM is willing to wheel and deal and make some moves. I think whoever coaches the Bears next is walking into probably a pretty solid situation, and could do well either right away or within a couple of years. I really hope Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson doesn't go there. I genuinely think the Lions' whole success is a mixture of Ben Johnson being a genius and Dan Campbell being just crazy enough to not care, to do stuff like go for it on fourth down in your own territory.
I mean, I think every Bears fan would be on the Ben Johnson camp. I just don't foresee it happening. Going to a rival team, it'd be awesome if he did come. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to call at this point. I think we have 3 openings right now.
Yeah, who is it? The Bears, the Saints,
And the Jets.
And the Jets so far. And I was actually just talking to a friend of the show, Brian, about this the other day, about like what other openings could come up.
Yeah.
And we couldn't really think of any. I'm sure there's like a blatantly.
I think me and you, Austin, have thrown out names, but I think
it was you and me, Forrest. That was
everyone. I think everyone we mentioned we thought was safe enough. We thought Doug Peterson, the Jags, was safe.
I guess you did say he might be the only other one that might get fired.
That'd be my top one if anybody is going to get the axe. But you never know.
It's tough to axe a guy that's won a Super Bowl, though. Even if he has only won a handful of games since he's been your head coach, like there's a kind of a longer leash there, probably, with a guy that has a ring over a guy that doesn't. I would
probably
assume.
There might be. I mean, he's shown, like you said, not only does he have the Super Bowl, but he's shown flashes. I think injury has played a part in the demise of Jacksonville at times. So,
Yeah, so I would argue with you just a little bit on the mind of the next head coach for the Bears. I don't know if you were saying you wanted them to, or you think they will go offensive-minded guy for their head coach. I would think that you would want somebody who it almost doesn't matter defense or offense, but you want to make sure that offensive coordinator knows what he's doing with a quarterback, which is true for every team. But when you have a guy like Caleb Williams, who is so young and he's kind of
that goes to my whole point. Lincoln Riley worked with Caleb Williams at USC and at Oklahoma. So
also as a head coach, you got a lot to worry about.
Oh, I totally get you, but you have to build a good staff around you. You look at certain teams and they just have good coordinators and position coaches as well for the head coach to do the whole overall leading of the team. So, yep.
All right, here we are. The third quarter just ended. The Vikings are up 20-3, but the Bears are mounting a little bit of a nice drive here towards the end of the third quarter. Sam Darnold, he's thrown the ball quite a bit, 35 times so far. He's 20 of 35 for 191 yards. He was a yard away from a touchdown there, but Aaron Jones punched it in. Another touchdown. He's already got one touchdown and interception. But Evan, how do you see the rest of this game going?
Well, I want to look up really quick just because I'm curious. I want to see Sam Darnold's game log for this year, and I want to see his attempts in each game because I think he is approaching maybe a season high in attempts. So he's got 35 attempts right now. He had 38 attempts against Jacksonville, a game in which he didn't throw a touchdown at all.
Yeah,
And
three interceptions. Yeah.
3 interceptions, yeah. And the Vikings kicked Will Reichard kicked 4 field goals to win that game for the Vikings, 12-7 over the Jaguars.
That was Parker Romo.
That Parker Romo?
Pretty sure.
Hey, did you cut Romo now that Reichard's back?
I didn't do anything.
Well, did your team?
Yeah, the Vikings waived Romo.
Did they?
Last Saturday, right before the Falcons game.
Oh, see, I didn't know that Reichard was on. Yes, I didn't watch, obviously, your game last week. Yep. So when I heard his name this week, I was like, oh, he's back.
Yeah,
so.
And I believe Romo, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Romo signed with the Patriots.
Yeah, he did. And you are right. It was Parker Romo in that game.
Sorry, I hate when I am that guy that's like, you're wrong. It wasn't that dude. It was this dude.
No, I'm glad you corrected me in the moment, and it wasn't somebody, a week from now that corrected me in the YouTube comments.
Well, if you were about to comment on YouTube that Evan was wrong, but then you stopped because I corrected him, still comment. Still do it, because that means we get another comment on our video.
Yeah, we'll take any of the comments. But I'm looking at Sam Darnold's attempts right now. That's really the only stat I'm looking at. He's thrown the ball 35 times tonight, and that would be the second most. If the game ended right now, that would be the second most of the season. You got to think he's going to throw it more than 3 more times in the fourth quarter.
Potentially.
So, we could be looking at a season high in attempts. And typically when he throws the ball more, the games don't go as well for the Vikings. The highest, for his completions above 30, they've all been wins, but they've been kind of those tougher, kind of closer wins. So the Jacksonville game, the second highest, the next 2 highest were that overtime win.
Oh my! I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Nice
Keenan Allen just had
Keenan Allen
highlight reel catch right there.
That was a catch. That's
nice. Wild. My goodness. That's the catch that you set yourself up for as like a 10-year-old in the backyard. You put your feet right on the sideline. You say, hey, buddy, throw me the ball, but make it a little wide. I want to fall into the ground on this one. That was wild. That was crazy.
Anyways, yeah, like some of these games that he's thrown the ball a lot have been really close. The overtime win over the Bears, the win over the Colts, which was by 1 score, the win over the Titans, which was only by 10 points. Like, these games are closer than they should have been, even going down the line a little bit more. A 1-point win over the Cardinals, a 1-score win over the Jets in London. All of those games he threw 30 plus times. And granted, the Vikings won, and I'm not saying that a Vikings win or loss hinges on how many times he throws the ball, but I think Sam Darnold plays better when he has a run game to support him, and I'd be interested to see the correlation between rushing yards in those games versus his passing attempts, because I would venture to guess the more he passes the ball, the less the Vikings have run the ball.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. Well, and what do they say all the time? Like, defense and a rushing game are the 2 foundational points you need to be a great team in football. And tonight, the second half, you've seen Aaron Jones kind of turn it on a little bit, and he's got that touchdown. So hopefully this fourth quarter goes the way of the Vikings being able to bleed the clock a little bit and get another false start there for the Bears, and get Aaron Jones going. And what's really nice is Cam Akers is a solid number 2. The Vikings don't have the Sonic and Knuckles that the Lions had before Montgomery went down, but you do need kind of that scat guy, the speed guy, and then the thunder, like you said earlier, Forrest, the beatdown guy, the Jerome Bettis.
Every team needs both types of running back styles. So,
yep. Unless you're a guy or a team like the Eagles with a Saquon Barkley, who he's kind of reminded me of prime Adrian Peterson.
I was gonna say there are a few of those that just have both the bruiser, but the cut and athletic ability that can be cool. Yep. Very few,
Yeah.
but yes, I'd say Saquon Barkley is one of those guys.
Jonathan Grenard was just all over Caleb Williams
He
on that.
still is. My
Holy
goodness.
cow.
That's wild. And almost an interception for Harrison Smith, but man, Caleb Williams was running for his life on that play. And if you're listening in the future, you probably know what play I'm talking about, unless another one happens here again. But
Roughly 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
yeah, Caleb Williams just ran about 7 miles to throw an incomplete ball.
And there was a penalty on the play, too.
Oh, man. This is kind of a heartbreaker for the Bears right now. The Vikings declined the penalty. 4th and 16. Man, Caleb Williams, he's going to need some oxygen on the sideline.
Yeah,
He took a lick at the end of that play, too.
Cam Ward decked him at the end. Oof.
My goodness. Well, hopefully this has been entertaining for you Skol Hoppers to listen to us. We're not quite done yet, but yeah, it's kind of the nature of the game, of our schedules, and of life right now that we had to record during the game right now. But if it works well, maybe we'll do it again in the future. Forrest, I think you probably already kind of answered this, but are you saying Lincoln Riley would be your ideal?
I don't say I don't think he's my ideal. I'm just saying you look at the how stars are kind of aligned. That's why I said he's my dark horse. The people that you start to hear some outer circles talking as potentials. But no, I don't. If I put money on it, I don't think he's probably a 1 in 100 shot, to make it. I think they're ultimately going to go somewhere in the NFL already, is my guess. I just don't know exactly who yet. It's so hard. It's so hard right now with so many teams competing for playoff spots and everything. It would not surprise me. I'll just throw out another name, Cliff Kingsbury. He had some hard times down in Arizona, but it's kind of revitalized his career a little bit. I could see him getting a crack again and he's an offensive-minded kind of guy.
Yeah. Is he with the Niners right now? Where is he at?
I thought he was with the Commanders.
Oh, actually, yeah, I think you're right. Because they did have what's his name? The guy that was the OC for the Chiefs.
You're talking. Yeah. I forget what his name is, but yeah.
Eric Bieniemy. They had him.
Thank you. Because he just got released from UCLA. So
yeah. So yeah, I think I hadn't thought about him before, but Kingsbury might be a dark horse guy for another head coaching job.
Yeah,
next year sometime.
Yep. I mean, you see what he's kind of doing with Jaden Daniels in Washington. So, not saying that will happen either, but just another name to throw out there. So,
absolutely.
So I did want to. I mean, I know this is a Vikings podcast, but speaking of, man, that NFC West, man, what do you think's going to happen? I think I said, not to toot my own horn, but I said look out for the Rams, and they're kind of come to fruition right now. They're a scary team and I think they'll make the playoffs. So they're a scary team to match up with. So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think one thing that really undercut people's thoughts on them this year was those few weeks that they didn't have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. But
yeah,
they've been back. Puka Nacua specifically, he might be, I don't know, at least top 5, if not better, wide receivers in the game right now. Once they came back, this Rams team, it's like they haven't missed a beat. They're good. They're gonna do some damage, and they'll probably win a game or two in the playoffs.
They had that firepower to do it. So
yeah, honestly, at this point, I'd be more concerned about the Vikings facing them in any game than the Packers.
Well, I was gonna say, and Evan chime in, but that leads me to my question: is who say the Vikings get the number 2 slot? Say they get the number 2 seed, or even number 1? It doesn't really matter. Who do you want, or who do you see you matching up with the best of all these playoff contenders right now? At this point in the season, who would you most like to see. Let's put it that way.
I think if the Vikings could be the 1 seed, I think you'd want to see a team like Seattle at home, especially with a banged up Geno Smith. I don't know how likely that is. I don't know that the Vikings getting the 1 seed is super likely at this point, although I think as Vikings fans, we're still kind of holding out hope for that. And I don't even know, like you were just saying, the Rams could win the West. I don't know that if the Rams win the West, I don't know. I don't think Seattle makes the playoffs out of the West as a wild card.
Right.
If the Rams win that division. So, but I mean, as of right now, if I had to pick a team just based on like the Vikings' strengths and the other team's weaknesses, I would probably say that, just because you're going to have Sam Howell, is it, at backup quarterback for Seattle, who, he kind of flashed in Washington there a couple years ago, and now he's kind of probably on track to be a career journeyman backup quarterback. I think the Vikings defense especially would match up well against that. I don't know a ton about Seattle's defense, and I don't know what they would do against this Vikings offense. But you have to think, with the talent the Vikings have, Justin Jefferson has even said it in some of his press conferences, like it's either teams defend me or they defend everybody else. You kind of have to pick one or the other. There's really no in between. Either I'm going to get a bunch of catches and a bunch of touchdowns, or Jordan Addison and TJ and Aaron Jones and, Brandon Powell, Jalen Naylor, they're all going to rack up the yards. You take it's like the blue pill or the red pill in the Matrix. Take your pick,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of my probably totally unrealistic prediction, or it's not even a prediction. Like if I were to pick who the Vikings would face just to give the Vikings an easy win in the playoffs, I'd say the Seahawks.
Yeah. I think that's hard to argue with, but judging by recency bias, I think if the Vikings go into the playoffs and they're looking at the Falcons, I think we'd all be pretty happy going into that game. Now, it is hard to beat a team twice in one season. That's kind of why divisions are so competitive within each other. So you can never chalk up a win automatically before you even blow the whistle on a game to start it. But I mean, we've seen how the Vikings played the Falcons, and it went pretty well the first time. So if they got them again, I think it'd be great. Although I think this Vikings team, and I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, this year, the 2024 version of the Vikings, they're going to play any team tough. They haven't really blown anybody out outside of the Falcons in the fourth quarter last week and the Giants the first week. They've just played tough games against everybody, and Jordan Addison just got a defensive pass interference drawn on him on what otherwise would have been an interception. But yeah, the Vikings are going to have the ball at the 1 yard line right now. That's crazy. I think the Vikings are set up to do some damage, and not that they will win every game from here till February, but I think they're going to have a fighting chance in every single game, no matter what.
I'll make a prediction right now. I think, and it's a little vague, and we just don't know how it's all going to shake out with 3 weeks left in the regular season after tonight. But I think an NFC North team will play in the divisional round or the NFC Championship. And let me actually, sorry, as it came out of my mouth, I realized I wasn't as clear as I wanted to be. 2 NFC North teams will play each other in one of those 2 rounds.
Yeah,
I would actually agree with you.
That's my prediction. And I don't know when that will be. It could be the wild card round. It could be the divisional round. It could be the NFC Championship game. Not entirely sure yet. But I think 2 NFC North teams will match up at some point in the playoffs.
I mean, the likelihood of those 3, yeah. I mean, at this point, yes, I would agree with you. that, I mean, it's just looking like 3 teams from the NFC North. So
it's not crazy to think, and maybe it's mathematically not possible, but the way I'm thinking about it right now, it's not crazy to think that we'll have 2 different NFC North matchups in the playoffs this year. I mean, I guess I don't know enough right off the top of my head about the seeding to know if that's even possible the way the matchups will work out. But to think, the 1 seed or whatever will play against, a lower seeded NFC North rival, and then the next week a slightly higher seeded NFC North rival, like that's not crazy to think about, and that would be wild.
It's not crazy, and that would be brutal for that team. And it could be it could be you, it could be the Lions. Either way, that could be brutal for those teams to, like you said, to have to play a team 3 times in a given year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the Vikings just punched it in. Cam Akers just ran 1 or 2 yards here for a touchdown to make it, as it sits right now, 26-3 for the Vikings.
26-6.
26-6. Okay.
Gotta give the Bears a little credit here. Come on.
Give the Bears some credit. They can't punch it in, but they can kick field goals. So.
Yep.
Is it Ramondre Stevenson? Is that his name? He's down.
Ramondre's I think he's the Patriots running.
Yeah, he's the Patriots.
Tyreek.
This is like
Tyreek or Tyquil or whatever.
Tyreek.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyways, he's injured. He's down right now.
Yep, he's also the one that set up the Vikings goal line opportunity there by, it was the typical, mutual contact between the receiver and the defensive back, but Stevenson basically locked up and shoved down Jordan Addison in the end zone there, which set up that goal line opportunity for the Vikings. So,
just shows that our player was stronger than your player. So
you're right. You know what, Forrest? You're right. They should have taken that flag off.
Give the guy some credit though. He did have that interception on Sam Darnold earlier.
He did. He also had that tipped pass to the commander earlier in the season to make that Hail Mary complete for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders to beat the Bears in the last second. So just a rough year for that guy. I'm sure he has gotten some very unwarranted threats like that. That would be ridiculous, but
and the thing is, he actually, I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah,
overall.
probably. Yeah.
He just needs to not be so into himself sometimes. Sure. I guess,
and it's hard because
he's way to say it.
Of big mess ups and huge points of multiple games now.
Yep.
Yeah.
You look at this game a lot, and I like the Chicago defense, but man, how many 3rd and longs have you converted this game? It's been a lot, and it makes me wonder if it's the players or if it's the scheme that's being called. And it's just, man, how many? And I'm not talking 3rds and 8s. I'm talking like 3rd and 13, 3rd and 15 type. I think there's been 4 that I can probably recall. It's just unbelievable. And credit to your offense. They got good players, but man, talk about get off the field.
There was that big one towards the end of the first half. It was kind of a dump off from Darnold to, I believe, Aaron Jones.
Yeah, Aaron Jones. He just stretched it. Yeah.
It was like 3rd and 17, and Jones got 17 and a half.
But it's almost like it reminds me a lot like the first game we played against you, where it was Jordan Addison that was shredding us on 3rd and longs every single time. And it just comes to what film study were the Bears doing on these things, and what scheme are they putting together on the field when it's 3rd and long, because whatever they're putting together is not working. So
all right, any major points we want to hit here before the end of the game, the end of the podcast this week? Evan, what are you thinking?
I've got one really quick. This might be the first game in a long time that Sam Darnold hasn't posted a plus 100 passer rating.
Oh, man.
Currently sitting at a 73.1. I really don't expect that to change a whole lot to the end of the game. I would expect the Vikings to just run the ball and try to bleed clock and get this game over with so they can start thinking about going out to Seattle next week. But yeah, it was kind of crazy, the stretch that Sam Darnold was on of these, I think it was a franchise record of games in a row of a over 100 passer rating.
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't know about the record being games in a row, but I'm pretty sure he has 11 games overall this season at or above 100 quarterback rating, which is a Vikings record.
maybe that was the stat that I was thinking of. It was just total games this season.
Yep.
But yeah, regardless, it's unusual for Sam Darnold to not have a game like that. He's played so well, and it's not that he hasn't played horribly today. It's not like a Jaguars 3 interception game, but it hasn't been lights out, 5 touchdowns Sam Darnold like we saw last week either against the Falcons.
It is noted. I've seen on Twitter some rumblings of maybe his hand. The right hand is bothering him a little bit.
He hit Quessenberry's helmet at least once on a throw. It knocked his pinky or something. And I think his pinky is what's been bothering him.
You got Jones. Call him up.
Daniel Jones. There's 3 quarterbacks ahead of him right now.
Yeah, Daniel Jones is in street clothes on the sidelines right now.
If Daniel Jones plays a snap for the Vikings this year, something has gone terribly, 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 terribly wrong. And not just one something, like 5 somethings. So maybe next year, he might be QB2 next year. That'd be something I'd be all for. But yeah, this year, please, we've seen enough Daniel Jones this year.
Too funny.
All right. I'm sorry, what?
No, I was just going to chime in with kind of thoughts on obviously I think the game's coming out as everyone expected. I think the Bears, they're kind of going for throw caution in the wind. Obviously when they're going 4th and 1, when they're in field goal range a couple times, why not try to pull off an upset? Because I think they knew they had to put in the end zone. Clearly they did not succeed in any of those attempts, but I think we'll see what the Bears do in the off season. But yeah, I'm really excited, not just for your Vikings and for you two, but this playoff I think is going to be one of the more exciting ones that I remember as of late, just with the teams that are potentially going into it, specifically on the NFC side. So yeah.
Yeah, it should be good, and let's hope the Vikings are peaking at the right time and the Lions are crumbling at the right time. You don't get too many years where your team wins 11, now almost 12 games at all. So I think losing a playoff game would be a massive disappointment for the Vikings this year. And I don't care about the people that'll say, oh, well, they were only supposed to win like 5 games, so this is actually really good. Like, no, I'm not. I'll never be happy for a playoff loss.
Well, let's kind of bring it into context. Obviously, you want your team to win it all every single year. That's obviously the goal. And there were maybe satisfied, maybe what one playoff win would you be like, okay, yeah, I'm still disappointed, but we're building on this type thing, or do you think you guys need to make at least the NFC Championship to be satisfied in your mind? And maybe satisfied is not the right word, but where you can be like, it was great. It was a great season, and although we didn't win it all, I can walk away overall looking forward to next year.
It's a fair question.
Evan, I want to hear your answer on that, but mine will be quick and simple and to the point. I'm
Super Bowl or bust.
I mean, actually, yes. I am 33 years old right now, which is, I understand, relative grand scheme of things, super young. I get that. If I have, the normal life expectancy, I probably got, 40-ish years left here.
Don't cut yourself short, man.
I am old enough to not be satisfied or happy unless they win it. I don't want to be 65 sitting here like, man, I hope I see my Vikings first Super Bowl. Like, no, that would be the most disappointing and awful thing. I want to see it, and until they win the Super Bowl, every year that they lose, I'm going to be super pissed and probably care less and less every year. But I say that all the time. I can't care less. Like I only ever care more.
You have a Vikings podcast.
I know. I keep double tripling down, and Evan, I blame you. But yeah, I mean, I'll never sit down after the Vikings lose a playoff game and say, it was actually a good year. I actually kind of liked it. No, F that.
Yeah.
Win the freaking Super Bowl. And until then, I won't be happy.
That's fair. I've been a Vikings fan for just a little bit longer than you have.
Yeah, just a couple more years.
Just a few more years. I mean, I was born into it. It's definitely a family thing, and I was born in Minneapolis, so I mean, I'm a native Vikings fan. If we're gonna take it that far, I've learned to manage my expectations, and I'm absolutely that Vikings fan that if we get to the divisional round, even if that means we're the number 1 seed and we get the first round bye and we lose in the divisional round, I'll be like, yeah, that was great. What a good season, guys. It'll suck. The week or two after that, you'll see me a little down in the dumps, but I'll rebound pretty quickly. Things will be fine. I think the expectations are very high for this team, and I think everybody in that locker room knows, and I think everybody that's sitting in that stadium right now knows that this team hasn't played its best football yet. And I think that's what I'm most excited for is when these big games come around, how will this team respond? I saw in the pregame stuff, these ESPN guys were kind of ragging on the Vikings a little bit. They're like, they haven't played anybody. Yeah. They haven't played anybody. They haven't. They played who? They played the Titans. They played the Jaguars. They played the Bears. Right? Like, who else have they played? They haven't really played anybody. They lost to the Lions. They lost to the Rams. Those are the only 2 good teams they've really played. And I would argue against that a little bit. The Texans are a good team. The Vikings laid the beat down on the Texans early on in the season. The Niners were a Super Bowl favorite coming into the season. Obviously, now that script has changed, but they handled the 49ers early on in the season as well. So it's not that the Vikings haven't beaten good teams. I think the Vikings you've said it all season long. You've said it even before this season, Austin. The Vikings play to the level of their opponent. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes that doesn't. And fortunately for the Vikings, here in about 6 minutes, it's going to have worked out for the Vikings 12 times this season. And that's a heck of a season for the Vikings after being projected to lose the NFC North by a lot with a bridge quarterback. And I mean, we were sitting here 6 months ago saying, JJ McCarthy will come in at some point and take over and it'll be a mess for a while, but it'll be a learning experience for him, kind of like it is for Caleb Williams right now for the Bears. Getting his feet wet and taking some lumps in the league, and we'll see what we can do after that. And I don't know, this Vikings team has a lot out in front of it, and I'm excited to see where things go. As I say that, Sam Darnold takes a really ugly sack,
an ugly third down sack too. But
you bring up a good point, Evan, though, because you just said, and I totally understand. It hurts. It hurts when your hopes are built up high. But you brought up a point that, early in the season or preseason, guys thought you'd still be a rebuild year type thing. Definitely not at 11-2, but about to be 12-2 type record. So, like I said, it's almost like you've raised the bar, and now you think you're not satisfied enough. So it's almost like you exceed expectations. To definitely have exceeded expectations. So yeah, I get it both sides, Austin, Evan. Totally get both the mentalities of you want your team to win it all. The reality is only one team wins it every year, and it hurts no matter no matter how good or how bad your team does, it hurts when they do.
Oh, Evan,
Yeah.
I think you're a few seconds ahead of me.
I'm a little ahead of you, but yeah, the Vikings just gave up a big blocked punt, and Ryan Wright went down hard. So I'm gonna try to get that off of my brain here. I want to wrap up this conversation, and I think we need to wrap up this episode. I will say, I think every other Super Bowl contending team right now that I can think of has obvious weaknesses, and that doesn't exclude the Vikings. I think the Vikings have some obvious weaknesses. Special teams is one of them, and this blocked punt on Ryan Wright is no exception to that. I don't know if they're going to get a penalty on that. That could be one.
Won't. No, it's clean. He hit the ball. Usually, if you
Yep.
get the ball,
If it's clean,
you can make
since he
contact.
tipped it.
I was only paying half attention to the replay, but anyways, I think like you look at the AFC side for a second, the Chiefs have some obvious weaknesses. They have maybe surpassed the record of these one-score games, where it's just like every game for the Chiefs seems like it's a one-score ordeal.
That's a good point.
The Bills seem like they're a one-man show. It's the Josh Allen show. And what happens if Josh Allen goes down and he's not scoring 3 touchdowns on the ground and then 3 more through the air, right? Like, or what happens if he injures his hand and he can only run the ball? You know, like
I still wouldn't want to go up against a Bills team where Josh Allen can only run the ball. That's still dangerous.
it's very dangerous. I watched that Lions game, and you watch him. He starts to run like he's gonna run it, and then all of a sudden he just pulls up and throws it. And it's like, how do you prepare for that as an opposing defense? It's really hard.
Yep.
But I still think they're kind of one-dimensional that way. You have Josh Allen. That's it. There's really nothing else. And the Lions proved that defensively, the Bills don't have much. You can run up the score on the Bills. The Bills will just run up the score on you a little bit more and, leave it up to Josh Allen to win the game for you. On the NFC side of things, the Lions, we've already mentioned, are really, really banged up, especially defensively. But now they're starting to become banged up on offense as well with, the big injury to one of their offensive linemen and then David Montgomery as well. That might not bode well for them into a playoff push. And, a 2-loss team is great going into the playoffs, but if half of your roster is injured, how are you going to win games? The Eagles, you saw one of their defensive coaches like blocking Nick Sirianni from talking to some guy on the sideline, some player on the sideline. Like, there's dissension in the ranks in Philadelphia as well. And I'm not saying the Vikings are the perfect team. I'm not saying the Vikings are going to make the Super Bowl, and I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying there are weaknesses on all of these other juggernaut teams in the NFL, and no one is continuing to talk about the Vikings. The Vikings,
and I'm okay with that.
The Vikings continue to be this like sub-narrative, like they're just kind of whatever until they do something actually worthwhile. And I agree with you. I'm okay with that too. And I'd be okay with that if that they rode that wave all the way to a NFC title game or a Super Bowl.
we almost need to enact a rule from here on out that we don't say the S word. I will say to point it back to this Vikings-Bears game really quick. The Bears are in the red zone against the Vikings right now, late in the game, and the Vikings would have to have an epic, almost historic collapse for the Bears to win this game. But the Vikings defense is featuring guys like Jay Ward, who is a young safety who hasn't really played much in his 2 seasons so far. Dwight McLaughlin, who was an undrafted rookie this year and hasn't really played much at all until right now. And Bo Richter, I've seen him on the field. And Jay Ward and Dwight McLaughlin have both made some pretty solid plays in this drive. And that's nice to see, because I'm pretty sure the Bears are still playing their starters. The Vikings defense seems to be filled with a bunch of backups right now, which that's just the way it goes with the score the way it is and the time of the game the way it is, not not talking crap or anything, but it's looking good, and I think we have a lot of good things to say about the Vikings defense, even as we watch Caleb Williams throw a touchdown pass to Keenan Allen. But yeah, the last handful of plays outside of that touchdown pass has made me feel pretty good about the Vikings' defensive depth. And yeah, I think this team is going to do some damage here in the playoffs. And for me, like I said a few minutes ago, Super Bowl or bust. And that's the last time you'll hear me say that name until the name of that game until after either the Vikings are out of it or the game itself has been played.
Yeah, I think a big key to that is the Vikings have to stay healthy now. And I think, I mean, outside of Stephon Gilmore, the Vikings are very healthy, all things considered. So you've got to prioritize that health and rest. You're going to come into a short week here, and you're traveling west. Historically, traveling to the West Coast, the Vikings, I think most Midwest and East Coast teams struggle going west. It's just the time zone difference and all of that is just weird. And it's going to be like, I saw the forecast for the Seahawks game next week. As of right now, it's supposed to be in like the mid to high 40s, maybe 50 and rainy, which is pretty typical of Seattle. So it's going to be warm outside, and you're going to have to deal with moisture probably. You're going to have to deal with some precipitation. Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how the Vikings respond to that. But health and keeping guys healthy, hopefully getting Brian O'Neill back.
He's back. He's been playing this game.
Yeah, but he went to the locker room, didn't you see that?
He's been on and off the field a few times. So.
Okay, I guess I haven't
his current status is good right now.
Okay, well, I mean, he's a guy that you'll want to keep an eye on, though, right? Like over this week, and maybe he doesn't practice a whole lot, and maybe he makes some headlines like, "Oh, he's not practicing," but it's out of precaution. Keep him healthy, keep him fresh, keep him good.
Yep,
so that the Vikings can really do some damage over these next 3 games. Fabian Moreau with some nice coverage there.
Yeah, some borderline. No, that was clean. No,
it was clean. Yeah.
All right. Beer time. Forrest, what have you thought about your beer? Give a good untapped review of what you've been drinking tonight.
I mean, if I'm rating the beer on an Untapped app, it's definitely 4 out of 5.
Okay,
it's definitely
that's solid.
It's definitely one I go to. My average is right on the spectrum of 3.5. If it's a beer I want to have again, I'll go 3.75 or above. So yeah, it's a solid beer. Definitely check it out from our friends at Confluence, and they do a solid job with their beers.
Yep, I'll go next just because Evan, I want you to go last. This SingleSpeed Tip the Cow mint, specifically the mint one. We all know the Tip the Cow is fantastic. Evan, I don't know, have we had the Tip the Cow on the podcast before?
I'd have to go back and look at our list. I don't think we've had it on the show, but I know I've definitely had a Tip the Cow with you, at least on one occasion, maybe a few more. But I'm definitely curious to try the mint. I have not tried that one yet.
Yeah, so maybe I'll save one for you. Yeah. But yeah, this mint flavor, I'm a sucker for a good mint flavored anything. But yeah, this Tip the Cow mint, solid. If I was rating it on Untapped, it would definitely be a 4.25. I don't really think I could ever say no to this beer. It's fantastic. Thank you, SingleSpeed.
Yeah. So, and remember, I had the River Ridge, which we will be going to here in a little less than a month, I think.
January 18th.
Oh, yeah. So right at a month from now, Austin and I'll be going to River Ridge for a live podcast opportunity with the Mainstream podcast. So they gave me some beer. The good news is I only drank 2 of them. They gave me 6.
Oh, wow.
And I have 2 of each of what I had. So there's there's some for both of us. But I started with their vanilla porter, and these were canned in-house when I ordered them, which is pretty cool too. So their vanilla porter, really good. I totally would recommend that. I think when you try this, Austin, you're going to love it just based on your previous experience with that. And then I finished with the Lucky Catch. Sorry, it's hard to read. And
the Irish, the red Irish.
Yeah,
Or
Lucky
Irish
Catch
Red.
Irish Red. They have a lot of like fishing themed beers because they are right on the Mississippi there. Like you look out the window and you can see the river there in
Awesome.
Bellevue, Iowa. So it's a pretty cool spot and one that I think maybe the three of us should make a little road trip to sometime.
It's really not that far. I mean, within an hour of where we are right now, right?
Yeah,
So,
probably just a short hour from here.
and we'll definitely be making that trip on January 18th for the Mainstream Podcast's Untapped. Untapped? On Tap? I think it's On Tap event. I think it's a whole day of us and the Mainstream and 3 or 4 other Iowa podcasts that we all got to meet at the Iowa Podcast Awards this summer. But yeah, check that out. We'll be posting up more information about that. I've actually been in contact with the Mainstream Podcast about maybe collaborating before that event, either on our show or on their show. And I can't emphasize enough, their show is great. You should check it out if you like hanging out with dudes. I don't know. They're funny. They're down to earth. They're nice to listen to. I like them a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap things up here. It was awesome hanging out. I loved watching the game. Even though we were in different places, it felt like we were kind of in the same room, just hanging out, watching football together. And that's the way it should be. But good beer, good chats, and we're going to get out of here on a Skol.
Skol.
Yeah.
Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop.